Oh my goodness. So I told Jania that she just couldn't make me cry, and before I even got started. So uh, yeah, it'll happen. I'm just sure it will. So you guys, I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Honestly, I've been so excited since the moment that my friends just honored me by asking me to speak here today. So thank you for having me here. And I'm thinking, how could I not be happy to be here today? We've got delightful hosts, and we've got beautiful company, and we have like wonderful snacks, and good material, hopefully, and probably best of all, an opportunity to get away from your typical Saturday morning expectations. So who's happy to be with me here today? That's awesome. Thank you so much. All right, I like all the happies. So let's keep going. I wanted to say something like, are you happy that it's sunny out today? But let's go with, are you happy that we know a sunshine exists? All right, raise your hands if that's it. We know it's there. All right. How about those of you, raise your hands if you're happy to be on this side of Christmas, having celebrated the good news and the wonderful family time and all the good stuff that goes with Christmas, but now we're on this side with a little less hustle and bustle and a little bit of normalcy, perhaps. Who's happy with me on that today? Good, a lot of happy still. I see some double hands. All right, so who is happy to be back to routine? Good, very good. Who is happy that we're smack in the middle of winter? Okay, there's some happies out there still. I knew we'd have a few less. All right, keep going with me here. Raise your hand if you're a relatively new mom. You've got a little one, a toddler, maybe a baby at home. Awesome, keep those hands up. So who's happy when baby is up one time, 7 times, 13 times last night? Okay, good. No happies left. What about the parents of school agers? Or if you're a school ager yourself, a high schooler, maybe a college kid, raise your hand if you're that person. Very good. And I'm sure you're happy to have that energy in the house and all the activities and just to feel part of the community that happens when you've got school agers. But how does that happy go when they're getting in trouble in school? Not so much happy? Or maybe when you're having trouble in math class, or when socially somebody's struggling. Yeah, that happy kind of goes away again. How about my empty nesters? Do we have empty nesters in the house? Good. How many are so happy to know that you have successfully raised those kiddos and they are on their own? Maybe not financially or emotionally ever. But how many of you are happy when it's just a little bit too quiet in the house and maybe they're not visiting as often as you wish they could? Yeah, it's a little bit icky. Let's go with, got a few more here because I just want to test you out and see how your happy is. How many of you are married in the house? Good. And that companionship, it's a blessing, isn't it? You're not supposed to put your hands down yet. Oh, I love it. Oh my goodness. Everyone's like, yeah, mostly. But how about when schedules get so busy and you feel like you're not even seeing your husband anymore because your work is demanding or whatever? I still see some happies up there. I knew this one would get a little funny. And those that are single in the house. And it's a blessed time. And you have independence and you're able to really invest in yourself. But what about when it gets a little bit lonely? And sometimes you just wish that you had that husband to never see. So how about raise your hand if everything in your life is perfectly happy? Happy in your finances, in your family life, in school and work, and even in the world. Yeah. The reality is we simply don't have that happy all the time, right? So I am here today because I am an expert in happiness. Is it because I am always bubbly and happy and optimistic and just a breath of fresh, uplifting air all the time? Yeah, my daughter's rolling her eyes. She's like, no. How about because I know how, and I've done this, and I will teach you how to manifest all things happy in all areas of your life. No, that's not why. I am an expert in happiness, just like you all are an expert in happiness here today, because we've lived life. And life that is at once rainbows and roses, but also storm clouds and bee stings. It can be energizing and exhausting and beautiful and ugly and too long or too short, just temporary and conflicting and changeable. I am an expert here today because I expertly know that there is no such thing on this earth where everything is changing all the time as perfect and lasting happiness. But oh my gosh, I have known utter happiness. I'm a very, very happy person, but man, back the clock up even, 4 or 5 years ago. Let's say it's 2016. And just know that I'm being totally honest, I adore my husband Tim. He's the kind of guy, and for those of you that know Tim, he's the kind of guy that subscribes to the philosophy that anything worth doing in life is worth doing big. Like big, big, big. Big heart, big friendliness, big enthusiasm, big energy, just big. It could also be big inappropriateness that he can get away with, and I just want to crawl under a table. Yep, his mom knows that well. It can be big projects that he launches right into without a plan or knowledge, but he's fearless, and so somehow it'll be okay. It could be just big spending, maybe, because maybe that big enthusiasm gets the better of him. So he's not perfect, but man, life with him is big and it's bold and it's exciting, but nothing surpasses the big dedication and the big selflessness that he shows me and our 4 kids, who in 2016, my Gabby, who was 17, and Sam, who was 13 at the time, Sydney, who was 11, and little Grady, who was 7. And we have this big, happy home life, and maybe we're one of those really barfy couples that, tell me, we can argue with the best of them. Big, big passion, right? But I was told that the teens in our life, and now again, my daughter's probably rolling her eyes, but they called us relationship goals. Apparently that was the term. But we were. The best part of my day was driving up the driveway from work in the afternoon, and I would see Tim, and he would be tootling around on his beloved lawn tractor, and he would have his work cell phone in the cup holder, and probably a beer in hand. It probably should have been the other way around, but it wasn't. And he had on a dumb floppy fishing hat that covered his shaved head, and he shaved it because he hated that he was turning gray, like right in this little spot that I thought was adorable, especially when he'd ask me to take my mascara and cover it in the morning before he went anywhere. So, I couldn't help but have a smile spread across my face when I would see this man who was just the love of my life, right? And so we were blessed. We would come home, and at the dinner table, it was not unusual for us to say that the best part of my day, and him, the best part of our day was coming home to our family. And again, it wasn't perfect, and we were loud and obnoxious and all these things, but it was wonderful. And we had this goal, and maybe the kids don't know this, but it was just to get the kids who are exhausting and adorable into bed so we could finally just flop into bed as well, just exhausted and tired and happy. And I would lay my head on his chest, and I would just tell him, "You're my favorite person." See, I he, I don't know where he went. Anyway, but he he is my favorite person, and I adore him. Even on, we are just super happy. Even on chilly September mornings, when it's raining and it's cold, and he's assistant coaching our kids' soccer team at Good Shepherd. And he decides, in all of his big enthusiasm, that even though the other team went home because the weather was too crummy, that it was time, thank you, cleanups, that it was time for them to have an intra-team scrimmage. And so we were happy watching. Grady and I were in the warm and dry truck because we're smart like that. And we were happy watching Tim just cheating shamelessly out on the field, checking my daughter and maybe holding my son in order to keep the ball. And we were even happy when Sam and Sydney came crashing into the vehicle, and Grady and I were warm and dry, but they didn't care. And they were wet and disruptive in our warm little place. And they stripped down because it was just, they had to get out of the wet clothes, and so they're bundled up in a warm blanket in the back seat, and they're just vulnerable but unembarrassed and just happy. And happy as Tim leans way too far into the window to give me a wet and sweaty kiss and just say, "Hey, follow me. We want to go get some fast food afterwards and then head out to our home." And of course, happy. Grady was happy as Tim's shadow, his best buddy, ran after him because he had to ride with Tim. That's just how things go, right? And I was happy as Tim and I moved around the parking lot and made our way out of the park, and he said, "Follow me. I don't know where I'm going." And I said, "Okay." But I had no idea that those would be the last words that he would ever speak to me. And we were happy as we drove out of the parking lot, and we took a right turn instead of a left, and it was toward a non-busy area without any of the fast food places that we were looking for, but I thought, clearly he knows where he's going. And we were happy as we were traveling down the road, and I could see the kids were warming up, but then it started to be replaced by a little bit of confusion as Tim's truck kind of veered out of his lane and across the oncoming lanes of traffic. And it was real worry, obviously, setting in when, in slow motion, the wheels of his truck bounced over the curb, and he's heading for the boulevard toward a fence of a schoolyard. And I'm thinking, what is happening? And it was utter terror by the time I whipped into some random driveway and got out. And at this time, I had stripped down out of somewhat close too, so I was in jeans and a tank top and no shoes and no jacket. And I just told the kids, "Don't get hit by a car, don't. Be sure you're watching where you're going. I have to get to your dad." And so I sprinted across the lanes of traffic, and somehow the happiness at this point was completely replaced by resignation. I just knew, even before I got to Tim, I just knew that this was it. And despite the mouth-to-mouth that I tried to remember from junior high and administered to him on the cold, wet grass, and despite the rescue workers getting there just unreasonably fast, and despite the hospital being so close, less than a mile away, and despite the doctors and the nurses who just desperately worked on him because we were a young family and we couldn't be without him. Despite all of that, it just the happiness, poof, it was gone. And what am I supposed to do with that then? What happens next? So yeah, I have known utter, irreplaceable happiness in this life, and I still do in a million ways. But what do we do when life that is so changeable and so unpredictable sometimes maybe steals the wind right out from our sails? No matter how under control we think we've got things, no matter how happy we are, what do we do then? So I think it's really, really important that we take a step back in this material right now, and we talk about something that is of utmost importance to this talk, to this material, to me and to you today, as we come to grips with this reality that happiness is fleeting. It's wonderful, it's romantic, it's desirable, it's all these things that we go for and that we strive for and that we try to cling to. But even as we're grasping onto it, sometimes it can slip away. And what do we do with that? So there's this important distinction, and it might even seem subtle, but I think it's life-changing. And no matter what expert or either secular or faith-based source you look to, there's a distinction between happiness and joy. There's happiness, which is externally driven. And joy is that internally driven thing. Happiness, putting it another way, maybe is something that happens to us, where joy just exists within us. I would say that joy is a physical thing, happiness is a physical thing where joy it's a thing of the spirit. So the utmost importance of distinction here today is understanding that happiness, in all of its wonderfulness, is based on things that are changeable, whereas joy that is calm and confident and fills us up and just is where we are, regardless of how violent the emotion is or how good or how bad the day is. Joy is based on things that are unshakable. And that's an incredibly important distinction for us to make at this point in time. So the night that Tim died, he died early in the evening, and we spent that whole night at the hospital. And although it was a blur of faces and phone calls and just forms and just tears, the one thing that is my most vivid memory from that night is my little girl, 11 years old, as she repeated over and over again to me throughout the night, "Daddy's in heaven, Mom, and Jesus is with us, and we're going to be okay." Over and over and over again, as we took no less than 798 trips to the bathroom. I don't know why, and I couldn't find it all night long. Thankfully, she also knew where the bathroom was. But that is what I remember. Jesus is with us, Daddy's in heaven, and we're going to be okay. This is the part where I knew I would cry. But thank God for that steady, confident heart of that little girl. And I think that is perhaps the single most effective illustration that I can come up with of 1 Corinthians 13, verse 13. "And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love." When you really think about that, you guys, the things that we put our faith into, really good, strong, confident things that are wonderful, that we've poured our energy into, that we've fallen in love with, that we've invested in, you boil it all down in this life and in the next, the only thing that's left: faith, hope, and love. So I don't know about you guys, but if I'm going to base my joy in my life about something unshakable and something unchanging, so it doesn't threaten to leave like summer in Minnesota or youth or my non-crying confidence, something that's not going to leave, I'm going to build our joy, my joy, on faith, hope, and love. So faith. Faith is one of those things. Well, let's even talk about the definition of faith. Faith is absolute trust and confidence in something. And again, there are many things in our life that we put our faith in, and rightfully so. But when you really, really think about it, God is the only one who will never, ever, ever let us down. Even though everyone is well-intended, life is changeable, right? But God's promises, they are not. He promises to always love us, even on our most unlovable days. He promises that he will always, always be with us, no matter what. He promises that when he looks at you, what he sees is perfection. No matter if it's a day when you really think you're killing it, you've got good hair day, you're looking awesome, you're brilliant, you're good, you're graceful, or on those days when you have a giant zit and your hair is a disaster and all your patience and social grace just went right out the window. Doesn't matter. He sees perfection in you every time. And that is something that you can put faith into. And hope. Hope is this feeling of expectation, right? That you just know something awesome is going to happen. So this God, who has never broken a promise to you and never will, and who loves you, is always with you, will never leave you, he has been with you before you were even here. He knew every step of your path. He walks alongside of you today, and he's gone ahead of you to prepare the way and to give you in your journey exactly what you need today. You may not even know you have what you need, but you do. And with that, we've got hope. Hope that our forever is secure, because he promised that, and we know that. But hope also that he is working good things for you. And I mean, we need to be a little bit humble sometimes and understand that the picture is so much bigger than us, right? And on those dark, dark days when you can't possibly see it, there's hope, because you know that he's working the plan for you. And love. Love is unconditional and just unconditional affection and charity, which I didn't really get what that meant when I looked it up, but nonetheless, charity. And so the God who, again, keeps his promises to you and gives you hope of your today and your forever, when you recognize that he intentionally created you, every single one of you, with all of your perfections and imperfections and all of that, he loves you enough to have given up his son because he wanted you. And that is love. That is incredible love. And so in that, just like we want either for our kids or our friends or for ourselves, he wants good things for us because of that love. But let's be a little bit real, right? I can sit up here and I talk about the wonderfulness of faith and hope and love. And I mean, without a doubt, it's true. We know it, right? We know it's true. We believe it. I'm confident in it. But what does that really look like? How do we really put that into practice? So what about when the gap in your life just is undeniable and the tears keep coming and the pain is too much, or even when it's not a big deal, when life is just life, right? How do we really say, not just say the words or believe the things, but actually live it. Live the joy, embody that joy, become it in a way that's just so much deeper than just saying the words and knowing the truth, right? How do we do that? That's the kind of joy I want. So 2 Corinthians 12, verses 9 and 10, and I'm going to read it here because it's not in my memory. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." This verse, I don't know about you, but does it kind of make you want to punch the Apostle Paul just a little bit in the face? Because you're thinking, really, Paul? What does that even mean? How can you say that? Again, I can know the truth. But here's the deal, you guys. The most ironic and perhaps surprising truth that I can share with you today is that when my happiness died for the time being with Tim, and I thought there was simply no more. It just didn't matter anymore. It is in that brokenness that I learned the absolute most about joy, and joy in Christ, and joy in a way that you can actually live it, feel it, hold on to it a little bit. So in the months that followed Tim's death, there were people that poured into us, and peace that I had from God, and the power of him, because he was honestly the only thing that brought relief for me. I experienced that in the time after Tim died. And with that, I started to learn about what joy on unshakable things is really about. So as I look out at all of you today, every single one of you who are beautiful, and you have different expressions on your faces, and each one of you is unique. There's a few things that I know about you. I know that we all struggle. We all have a ton of good stuff too, right? Don't get me wrong. But we all struggle. And sometimes those struggles can look big and just very public, and maybe the kind of struggle that really garners attention and sympathy from other people, and maybe even quiet fear from others. Those big struggles, like maybe the death of a spouse, or of a mom or a dad, of a grandma or a grandpa or a son or daughter or a sibling. Maybe it's something like an accident, a horrible accident, or a natural disaster, or an illness, maybe cancer, heart disease. Or maybe it's something like the death of a child, or a miscarriage, or a grandchild. Those are big struggles. But then there are these other struggles that maybe we're wrestling with, and maybe they just seem, or we tell ourselves, they're a little bit smaller, and maybe they're a little bit less public, and maybe others may not even give you the same kind of sympathy because maybe they don't really understand, or they just don't even really think it applies, so they just don't have the empathy. And those things might be a job loss, or a divorce, or a breakup of a friendship or a relationship, or maybe it's bad grades, or just difficulty in the choices that you have to make with your future, or you feel like you don't have a purpose, you don't understand what it is. Maybe it's financial insecurity, or infertility, or an unexpected pregnancy, or you're struggling with your kids. Any of those things, they're all struggles. Or maybe there's even the quiet ones that are kept perfectly private because maybe you're protecting yourself. Things like maybe a struggle that you haven't been brave enough to talk about with depression or anxiety. Or maybe it's your weight, a struggle with your weight, or a struggle with your body image, or addiction, or temptation, or forgiveness that we can't give or get. Or maybe it's fears or doubts or anything. They are all struggles. And here is something I am up here to tell you today. There is no comparing struggle, right? No looking left and right and go, you know what, my struggle is not the same as yours. It's just, it's little. It's no big deal. The thing is that your struggle is real. It's here. It's today. And it just is what it is. But as I look out at you guys too, I also know that you yearn for joy. That joy, that quiet, confident, calming joy. That even in the midst of your struggle or not, on the days when it's awesome and you've got none of that, you want that to fill your heart, to fill your soul, and to just, maybe make it all seem just a little bit better, a little bit more bearable. But more than anything, when I look out here at you guys today, and all of your unique faces, and they're all full of unique expression now, I know more than anything that God sees you. You, each and every one of you. No matter what you're in today, your small struggle, your big struggle, your perfectly, completely happy, fine day, God sees you. He knows your struggle. He is there with you. He feels the pain. So God who intentionally created you and knew all of your days before you even had them, you are his daughter. And this is always when I cry again, because somehow that is, you are his daughter that he adores, his little girl that he has guarded from behind, or the one that he walks with today. And he has gone up ahead. He's paved the way. And he knows the pain that might be in your heart today, but he knows that the hope is there, and he loves you through all of it. And that I know without a doubt. But we can talk about all this, right? And we can get emotional and whatever, and we can say those things, but let's get a little bit practical. Because I don't know about you, but I kind of liked the tangible happiness that I had with Tim. The fact that I could lay my head on his chest, or that I could see him pile up our kids in an obnoxious bear hug. I liked that. I could hold on to that. I want that. How do we do that? So for me, it really looks like 4 things. And these are not things that you haven't heard before. Being still and observant, receiving love, being open to that, praying like you mean it, not just praying, but praying like you really mean it, and being in the Bible. So I'm betting I'm not alone here. When I am in the midst of intimidating or frantic or exhausting struggle, man, I strive. I strive harder. I work harder. I search harder. I wish harder. I just harder, because I'm going to get this. I'm going to rely harder on myself. And when I am in that mode of striving and trying harder and working harder, I am in no way, shape, or form able to see the Lord, who is so right in front of us, just waiting for you to see him. It would take a burning bush or a bolt of lightning or a talking squirrel or something for me to recognize that he is there. But in the time when I was the most broken, and I was just sitting in a lump of sweatpants and snot, I was finally still enough to actually see him. And he showed up in the most amazing ways. I mean, for me, a lot of times it was in nature. For any who have followed our story, we have a thing with rainbows. And it's rainbows. Rainbows when there is no good reason for a rainbow. It'd be like a rainbow on a day like today. I kid you not. Or just the vastness of the beautiful starry sky at night. Or weird animal interactions. I'm being totally serious. We had some really weird ones. They happened a lot. But I'm telling you, he shows up on the days when I was perhaps the most lonely and I just wanted to feel Tim's presence in the house. One of his favorite songs would come on the radio. Or a perfectly timed text or phone call from someone who I just needed to hear from. So I'm telling you, ladies, it's okay. Give yourself permission to stop striving, stop working so hard, and just be. Just be still for just a little bit. I promise you, he will blow your mind in the ways that he shows up. In the months also following Tim's death, and even beyond that time, God knew, and today, even among us all today, you guys, God who created us in his image, right? He is love. And he sent his son who lived among us, lived as a human, so he knew the desires of our heart. He felt them himself. And the Holy Spirit that lives within us, the one who knows what you need and is right there feeling it with you, God knows that we need to feel love in a tangible, physical, like hold on to it kind of way. And thank God that he knows that about me. Because he sends his people, the people that he puts around you, even the ones, like Jania was saying, or the ladies were saying, the strangers that you have no idea might be speaking into your story. He puts them around you to be his hands. Maybe it's his hands to hold or to help you, or feet to run to you, to rescue you, or to just walk beside you. He puts those people there for a reason. And all we need to do is lean into that love. Seek it out, you guys. This is wonderful. When I see all of us together, and it's relationships among women, it's our family, it's our friends, it's strangers, that love, that is how he is pouring into you, and it will fill your heart. But he's just getting started, you guys. So when God, who sent his son to die for us on the cross and give us that most amazing gift of hope forever, that we know that our loved ones are somewhere we're going to see them again, and that our forever is secure, not only did he give you that gift, but he gave you the gift of prayer, that direct connection to God, the creator of the universe. I mean, honestly, think about that for a second. The creator of the universe. You have a direct line to him. Anytime you want it, anytime. And he will always answer. He will never, ever not answer. You may not be able to see the answer right away, and it may not look exactly how you imagined it, but here's where you need to remember that he's the creator of the universe, right? He sees a little bit more maybe than we do. But he gives you that direct line. And I think when the times are the toughest, that's when you really learn how to pray. You pray like you mean it. You pray like your life depends on it, because quite frankly, maybe there is nothing else. And it can be the most formal or informal prayer. It can be eloquent or tongue-tied. It can be anything. You tell him anything, he can take it. Anything that you can come up with, or complete silence because you're just listening. Those prayers, they are powerful, and he gave you that so that you know he is always there for you, and that you always have that direct line to him. But He's still not done. So all of you here today, I imagine, whether you're Christians or not, or whether you're a relatively new Christian or someone who's been raised up in the faith, I'm pretty sure you've probably heard about the power of the Word, right? The power of the Bible. And again, I'll stand up here in front of you, and I know you all know it. It's powerful, right? There are these stories that speak to you at just the right time. It's either like maybe like an old grandmother who just has all the life experience you could possibly need, and you open up that Bible and boom, it just hits you right as you need it. Or maybe that kind of like that best friend who can just say exactly what you need to hear on the day you need to hear it the most. So we know that. I mean, we know the power of those stories, but what about that peace that surpasses understanding kind of power? What is that? And I tell you what, like in my darkest times, when I had no idea how to feel better, and joy was the furthest thing from my mind, and quite frankly, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to feel better, and I certainly didn't know how. Those are the times, my friends, when you open that Bible, or if you're like me, you lay in bed at night in the pitch black and you open Google, and you say, you Google up verses about death, verses about waiting, verses about boredom, verses about choices or decisions or loss or whatever it is, and it will spit out lists of verses, and read them. Read them, ladies, until one hits your heart, maybe tugs at that hurt a little bit, and resonates with you. That's the one to reread and reread and reread. I swear I reread verses probably 50, 100 times on those darkest nights when I didn't even want to feel better. But somehow, through that word, the power of that word, that peace that surpasses all understanding, it's like it covers your heart with this blanket, and you don't even understand it. And before you know it, and before you even really think it's possible, somehow you feel just a little bit okay. And it doesn't make any sense. And you couldn't tell anybody why it happened, but it just does. I'm telling you, ladies, that is faith and hope and love in a readable form for you to look at anytime. So there you have it. In a world where, life is amazing, right? It's awesome, the variety, the things that come and go and change and whatever. It's exciting and it's fun and it's wonderful. But in a life where things are changeable like that, we want to build our joy, the things that make us feel steady, on those things that are unshakable. And it may not look like skipping through the tulips kind of joy, right? It might just be that kind of joy that other people just look at you and go, I don't know how she does it. Or maybe it's just that quiet strength, or somebody says, oh my gosh, she is so resilient. It's probably that kind of joy. And that's built on faith, hope, and love in God. So today, what I wish for you, I wish you wonderful happiness. That changeable, wonderful, romantic kind that's awesome and it's fun. I wish you all of that life can afford you. But more than that, I pray that you put your heart on a foundation of faith and hope and love in our God. And most of all, I pray that God fills that tender and tough heart up with joy that is absolutely unshakable. Amen.